The amendment offered by Mr. Trone. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. And if the gentleman would like a roll call vote, happy to roll that in. Okay. We'll postpone the recorded vote until later in the markup. Are there other amendments at the desk?
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
The gentlelady from Vermont, clerk, would you read us out, please, as we distribute the amendment?
Mr. Chair,
Amendment number 13 on rural communities offered by Ms. Balint.
Ms. Balint, you have 4 minutes, rather.
thank you. The ballot amendment would restore critical funding to rural communities in line with the deal we reached earlier this year. I'm deeply frustrated that rather than fund the government at the levels that we agreed to on a bipartisan basis just a few months ago, Republicans are determined to force deeper cuts that would directly impact rural America. A deal is a deal, and we have it in writing. And as I said earlier, but I think it bears repeating, 15 members of the committee on the Republican side supported that deal. It's like an SNL skit. You can't believe it when you're saying it, but it's true. It's absolutely true. And I'm here standing up for Vermont, which is an overwhelmingly rural state. And I want to highlight the House Republican vision for rural America. Their appropriations bills would cut nearly $100 million to the Reconnect program, which has already delivered high-speed internet to nearly 400,000 households in rural America. It would cut 30% to the Rural Homes Loan Program, which would mean thousands of families in rural America would not be able to get a loan to afford a home. It would cut $500 million to the Rural Energy for America program. This would raise energy costs for approximately 15,000 rural small businesses and agriculture producers. It would cut $564 million to the Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes Grant programs, which remediates health hazards like lead-based paint and low-income housing. This will result in approximately 46,000 children continuing to be exposed to lead-based paint hazards. These are cuts that are unacceptable to rural America. I don't understand why Republicans are going after rural America when they've already been kicked to the curb. I do not understand that. When I'm home in Vermont, constituents come up to me routinely at the grocery store, at the post office, downtown at the bank, and what they say is, we don't want you to cut programs that are helping us. In fact, in the midst of this critical emergency in Vermont right now, we should be fully funding FEMA. We should be making sure that people can recover from disasters. It is unacceptable and outrageous that the Republicans are reneging on a deal that we struck to avoid a catastrophic default. Here we are just a few months later at the brink once again, and as my colleague said, it's gonna cost money, a lot of money, to default. So the argument that somehow this is saving us money is absurd. It's ridiculous. So I urge adoption of my amendment. I wish that we could come to some bipartisan agreement and concern and stand up for rural America. It is really hurting right now. It needs our support. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady from Vermont and open the floor up for anyone who would like to claim opposition to the amendment. I yield to my friend from Oklahoma, Mr. Burkeen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For 5 minutes.
Nothing specifically in this budget cuts, reforms, or provides reductions specifically to Function 450, the community and regional development areas that are being discussed. It's absolutely certain that rural communities have been greatly impacted by this administration. We know that since the time that this administration took office, the average family of 4 is spending 15% more to buy the exact same goods and services as they were at the head of January of 2021. The average family of 4 spending $1,100 more per month to buy the exact same goods and services. That equates to about $14,000 over the course of a year. Specifically, if you look at the 36% increase in energy prices coupled with the 15% general inflation, then you really get a good picture of rural America. I grew up ranching. I still ranch. And it's amazing when you talk to people, what is their biggest issue with what the federal government's doing or not doing? It's the fact that you can't buy a feed truck for what you could just a few years ago. You can't buy a cake box. You can't buy a feed to fill up a overhead feed bin. It'll cost you almost twice. I was just curious. I wanted to see what good 4-point barbed wire would cost right now compared to what I bought it a few years ago. It's about twice what it was several years ago. And so if you want to know what the average person in rural America is dealing with, it is inflation that is driven by devaluation of our currency because of runaway federal spending. So if you really want to help rural America, get serious about reining in this out-of-control spending addiction. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask unanimous consent to submit for the record, a House Budget Memorandum of August 2023 about the CPI report.
Without objection, so ordered.
And that you'll find, the true expense that I kind of mentioned. Specific to agriculture, there's a 23% in just 2 years increase specific to agriculture, inflationary costs. I kind of cited some things a minute ago that I can tell you from being in the agricultural industry. And on that front, Mr. Chairman, I'd also ask unanimous consent to submit data from the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank on interest rates for business into the record. The cost of borrowing, in addition to all of the inflation, direct inflation, the non-direct costs of interest rates climbing because of this out-of-control spending. That is entitled the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank Interest Rates Last 18 Months. I'd ask unanimous consent to submit that to the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
And let me just say that in closing, we want to turn around the hardship on families, farmers, ranchers. Let's get serious about not only helping them directly in what's now and present, but also for their kids and their grandkids, who many people are getting out of the agricultural sector because input costs are so high. And I'm seeing it, and that's the reality of what's happening in rural America. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield the balance of my time.
Thank the gentleman from Oklahoma. Rep. Balint, you have 1 minute to close.
Thank you. What I want to say is this. I feel like we sit in these committees and we're constantly exposed to a Republican sleight of hand. They make drastic, extreme cuts, and then when we try to hold them accountable as to what that will actually mean for Americans, it's always, well, no, it's not going to impact those people. It's not going to impact those people. And no, it's not going to touch that program. But the money has to come from somewhere. The money has to come from somewhere. So I'm done with the sleight of hand. I call on my colleagues to really put aside this partisan sham and come together to help the people who are most in need of that help. I yield back the remainder of my time.
Thank the gentlelady. The question is on agreeing to the amendment offered by Ms. Balint. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. If you
request a recorded vote.
We will postpone the recorded vote until later in the markup per our agreement. Are there any other amendments?